First, a new book takes a look at the history of UFO sightings and the latest research on the possibility of extraterrestrial life.
Historian and journalist Garrett M. Graff says the government is covering up information, but not for the reasons you may think. His book is UFO, the inside story of the U.S. government's search for alien life here and out there. Good morning. Garrett is a college classmate of mine as well.
No kidding.
Good morning, Garrett. How are you?
Good to see you, Lauren.
Good to see you, too. Thanks for being here.
Wait, what class did you guys have together?
No, we were
in the same class.
Yes,
okay. You're saying the class at Harvard.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we know he's a smart guy.
Absolutely. Garrett, because I've read your other books on Watergate and on 9/11. What drove you to write a book about UFOs? What was it specifically?
Well, as you know, Lauren, I come at this mostly from the national security side. And what got me interested in this subject was hearing serious people in Washington start to talk seriously about this subject. There's been a sea change in the U.S. government over the last couple of years about trying to think and act really to solve the mystery of UFOs and what the government now calls UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. And we see new congressional hearings about it. We see new testimony from whistleblowers and a lot of new efforts by the Pentagon. And so that got me interested in thinking about how the government has previously looked at this subject and what the truth might actually be.
Right. You make the claim that the government is absolutely covering up information about what is in the skies. Give us an idea of what you're talking about.
Yeah, but part of this challenge is untangling the different layers of why the government is so secret about this subject. You know, some chunk of what the public thinks are UFO sightings are the government's own secret new planes, new drones, new technology development programs. Some chunk of UFO sightings we know are also adversary advanced technologies. You know, Chinese drones, Russian drones, Iranian drones. And the Pentagon is squirrely about talking about what its sensor networks and radars pick up so as to not give those adversaries an advantage or knowledge. What's much more unclear to me, though, is whether the U.S. government is capable of the sort of long-standing, meaningful cover-up of knowledge about extraterrestrial crafts, or what people now call non-human intelligence. And that, I think there's a lot of reason to be dubious that the government actually knows more than it's telling. And in fact, I actually think that the opposite is true. I think that the government is just as baffled about what many of these phenomena are as the rest of us.
Garrett, in doing your research, were there any conclusions that you came to just in terms of your own personal beliefs about UFOs, or as now the government's apparently referring to them as UAPs?
Yeah, one of the things that's really fascinating, you know, I tried to blend both this book with the knowledge, the government's UFO searching history, as well as the advancing astronomy about the science of the universe around us. And to me, there's an incredible revolution in knowledge that has taken place in the last 20, 25 years that now makes clear that the math is almost certainly on the side of the aliens, that that as we understand the breadth and scope of the universe and just how many planets out there are probably habitable, scientists now estimate it's actually 1 sextillion, that's a billion trillion habitable planets across the universe, that probably across the universe there's teeming life and probably lots of intelligent life as well. Whether any of it is close enough for us to know, that's an entirely different question.
So in this book, do you go through individual moments of history in this subject here, the Roswell incident, everything around Area 51 and things like that?
Absolutely. And trying to look back at the incidents and encounters and sightings that have shaped the way that the government thinks about it. You know, there's this fascinating sort of self-perpetuating flywheel that you have seen over the last 80 years of public sightings leading to government national security scares, leading to, you know, more adventurous and imaginary pop culture, movies and sci-fi books, which then fuel the public interest and attention and fuel a whole new wave of sightings.
Garrett, when we think about, all these movies that we've seen where aliens and humans interact, do you think that because we've explored so much of, our own universe, I suppose, do you think that there will ever be a moment where there will be some sort of interaction?
Yeah, one of the things that I think science and sci-fi particularly gets wrong about this is imagining that the first sign that we have of an intelligent civilization elsewhere will be clear and unambiguous. You know, sort of the Independence Day flying saucer over the White House or the Jodie Foster radio message from space in Contact. What astronomy and science actually has concluded is that we're almost most likely to see first a piece of space trash, the equivalent of a empty plastic bag from some other civilization blowing through our cosmic backyard. And it's going to be a much more ambiguous and curious moment when we sort of look at that and says, well, that doesn't come from our Walmart, so whose Walmart does that come from?
A very good point there. Well, a fascinating topic, obviously. For more, you can check out GarrettGraff.com. There is the information on the book. You can follow him on Instagram and on X. There's the handle. Really appreciate your time this morning.
Have a great holiday.
Thanks, Garrett. You'll be hearing from me about the reunion pretty soon.
I hope so.
Have a great day, Garrett.